Lance, what's wrong, buddy? Hunks was soft and soothing, but damn if Lance was in the mood for it. Nothing, he grumbled, refusing to look up to meet his mesmerized eyes. He sat on the upper deck at the back of the boat, the feet on the lower deck and elbows in his knees as he gazed at Lance. He did hear the hum of concern, though. Dude, I got you like your favorite drink ever, and you haven't touched it. He gave a half-hearted shrug. Not thirsty. Or maybe the problem is that you're too thirsty, Paige said without looking up. She sat in the driver's seat, feet propped up on the railing that ran down the center of the boat. Lance frowned at her, blindly grabbing the space under the bench seats for a jacket pouch and throwing it at her. She swatted harmlessly to the floor and didn't have the energy for a follow-up attack. He laid sprawled out on the bench seats at the front of the boat, lying on his side with his head cushioned on one arm and his other arm hanging uselessly off the edge of the seat. I still think you should try to find him and talk to him, Hitch said, sounding far too disgruntled than it was fair. It wasn't any of her business. What good would that do? He made his stance on the matter pretty clear when he stood me up, he grumbled. Maybe he just didn't see your note? Hunk suggested. Lance scowled at the floor of the boat. I put it in the hoodie he wears everywhere. There's no way he didn't see it. Silence fell over the boat. It was a conversation they had several times already, and quite frankly, he was sick of it. He was fine moping on his own without his friends trying to make him feel better. He knew they meant well, but it didn't help. It wasn't going to help, and Lance got too attached to someone who saw him as nothing more than a vacation fling. And now he would hurt for it. Nothing new there. So why did it hurt so much? Probably because he felt a lot of potential between him and Keith. He had really thought they clicked. Thought that maybe, just maybe, they were on the same page. Apparently not. He forced himself to breathe deep, pushing past the heaviness in his lungs, the hollowness in his chest. His stomach rolled, hungry and demanding food. But he had no appetite, and he had a feeling he'd be nauseous if he tried. He wasn't even starting to get a headache from lack of caffeine. His now cold coffee sitting close by and mocking him. He was an idiot. He should have known. He shouldn't have gotten attached. This was his fault. He deserved to feel this way. He couldn't blame Keith. Keith hadn't meant to hurt him. Probably. They just weren't on the same page. It was his fault for getting hurt. He had no expectations, hopes that he shouldn't have had. And now they were souring and leaving him feeling sick. He'd be okay eventually. Keith would fade into a distant memory. Just another what if in his life. He'd probably always regret not just talking to him like a normal human being, but he didn't think he'd ever regret the time he spent with him. He heard the car pull up in front of their dock, saw the moment out of the corner of his eye. Frick. He really didn't want to work right now. The last trip out had been torture. His mouth feeling fake and melting like plaster off his face. Hunk, do I have any reservations right now? Nope. Not unless they book in the last 5 minutes. The door opened and slammed shut. Great. Someone sounded angry. Were they about to be yelled at? He shuffled through his memory, trying to remember if they had offered anyone recently or had any dissatisfied customers. He didn't think so. But tourists were crazy. It wouldn't be the first time they got an earful for absolutely nothing. Keith? Pitch said, surprise evident in her voice. Lance felt his blood run cold and his heart stop. His head snapped up, eyes blown wide as they settled on Keith. Keith! He stomped down the dock, feeling hitting the wood in a vengeance. Determined fur blazing in his eyes, brows furrowed, whole face pulled into a vicious scowl. Those dark, dangerous eyes were zeroed in on him, and he looked mad. Lance's heart jumped straight into overtime. He sat up, scrambling backwards, knees going up and hands behind him to hold him up. Keith? His voice was barely more than a squeak. Keith leapt onto the boat, and Hunk scrambled to scoot out of his way. He stomped straight up to Lance, stumbling for only a second as the boat rocked under him. Keith, what are you... Keith planted his knee on the seat between his legs, using the other to keep him standing as he hunched over him. Two hands grabbed the front of his shirt and tugged him forward. and then he was being kissed. The kiss wasn't kind, and it wasn't gentle. It was angry, rough, raw, and fierce. His lips were hard against his own, teeth biting, tongue shoving onto his mouth with a little remorse. Lance felt his eyebrows still, hands hovering awkwardly in the air, heart pounding, breath frozen in his lungs, unable to move past the lump in his throat. Then slowly he melted into it, his eyes drifted close, and head automatically tilting to deepen the kiss, tongue rising to meet Keith's. His hands found their way to Keith's face, fingers burning into his hair and holding tight, like his only anchor out at sea. As soon as he started to respond, Keith eased into him, relaxing and softening their kisses. Lance hadn't realized how stiff he had been until they were both melting into each other. There was a lot of hoots and hollering, comments that he didn't quite hear, he didn't care to. He was lost in Keith, the smell of him, the feel of him, the warmth of him, the taste of him. Then they broke apart just violently as they had come together, but they hovered close, panting breaths that fanned out across each other's lips. Keith was too close for him to really see him clearly. But that didn't stop him from trying. His hands were still clenched fists in Lance's shirt, and his fingers still held tight in his hair. Keith, he breathed, hearing the whine in his own voice, not caring. Who the frick? He said between heavy breaths. Lance winced the anger in his voice. Leaves a note in someone's hoodie instead of on the nightstand. Lance bristled, voice raising in pitch. I wanted to surprise you. Well, you did 2 days later. That meant, oh. You didn't just stand me up. I thought you stood me up. Why would I do that? Probably for the same reasons you thought I did that. Oh, frick. God damn. He was an idiot. Oops. He leaned back far enough for Lance to really see him roll his eyes. Yeah, freaking oops. My hoodie, Lance. Really? Lance loosened his grip a fraction, frowning as he leaned back to narrow his eyes at him. It was romantic. It was gonna be a surprise. Like the joy of finding a dollar you forgot about in your pocket. Why don't you check your pockets? I haven't worn that hoodie since before the race. What? How? But how was I supposed to know? You wore that hoodie almost every day. After the race, we buy finisher jackets. Keith stand, releasing his shirt with one hand to gesture into the jacket he was wearing. And yep, that was a finisher jacket. And Stanley felt like an idiot. I didn't know that. You should have just woken me up. You were cute and tired, and I felt bad. You're an idiot. I know. Keith sat back on his seat, one hand still clenching his shirt, but with significantly less force. He shoved his other hand into his pocket, pulling something out and holding his hand out to him. Here. What? Just take it. His voice was softer now, almost certain, hesitant, sheepish. After storming onto the boat like a hurricane out for vengeance, he shoved a piece of paper into Lance's hand, suddenly able to meet his eyes. His hand dropped from Lance's shirt, both hands twisting together on his lap. Okay. He unfolded the paper, eyeing Keith curiously, looked down, and his breath caught in his throat. He swallowed hard, licking his lips, heart fluttering in his chest. Is this? Keith's head was bowed, hiding his expression. His voice was strong when he spoke, but broken at the edges, giving away his nervousness. My number and my Skype name, so you can talk to me if you want or whatever. Lance felt like he couldn't breathe, but for once it was a good feeling. He hooked a finger under Keith's chin, forcing him to lift his head, and waited for him to meet his eyes. When he did, Lance was floored by the sheer stubborn determination he found there. His lips pursed into a final line. Once he met Lance's eyes, he refused to look away. Lance didn't say anything. He didn't think he could, so he did the only thing he could think to do. He kissed him. The kiss was slow and sweet, a gentle push and pull of their lips, something sweet and gentle that gave way to something slow and heated, passionate and excited, fueling the by a promise that neither of them dared to think might be possible. A promise of more. A promise that this wasn't the end. It wasn't goodbye. It was a see you later. Keith's fingers ran through his hair. His arms wrapped around Keith's waist, pulling him into his lap. He kissed him deeply and without reserve, letting Keith know exactly how he felt through actions, because words had failed him. Keith seemed adamant about doing the same thing. "That is so sweet," he heard Hank whisper, voice vibrating in a way that told him his best friend was close to tears. "They're so cute," Alert agreed, voice whispered coo. "It's like a train wreck," Fitch said, not bothering to keep her voice down. "Terrible, but I can't look away." Lance and Keith both flipped her off over Keith's shoulder, but didn't stop kissing. He didn't think they could. "Call me when you get back to the States," Keith whispered, lips moving against his lips. "Only if you go on a Skype date with me when you get home." "Deal." Shira made a disbelieving sound, cutting through the moments he muttered. "I can't believe my baby brother is King the Riverman." And as the vote erupted into the song chorus of Riverman, he laughed against Lance's lips, his own curling up to a small smirk. "My new favorite cryptid." When Lance was 25, he met a boy with beautiful, shy, smiling eyes like the depths of the ocean. He was gruff and sour and rough around the edges. He was fragile and caring and incredibly gentle. He was hot-headed and competitive and always scowling. His smile thoughtful and strong and beautiful, inside and out. He slipped into Lance's life like so many others, but latched on and refused to let it go. He was complex and grouchy, but hid layers of humor and playful smiles beneath his resting scowl. He was hard on the outside, but Lance slipped easily in to find that soft center. And he fell, hook, line, and sinker. It could have easily been a fling, a hookup, a casual affair. Despite the moments they shared, Lance could have moved on, could have let him go, could have treated him like all the others that had come and gone. But he made Lance see colors again, took that warm trickle of happiness that had slowly been leaking back into his life, and smashed the floodgates were open. Lance wasn't ready to let that go. He could have moved on. He could have found someone else, but he didn't want to. He wanted Keith. Keith made him happy. And that was what fighting for. Fighting to keep. He didn't think it would be easy, but he did think it would be worth it. No regrets, right? He learned that the coincidences that can be more if you want them to be, and happiness is what you make of it.